Hi, my name is Courtney Canfin. I am the Special Projects Coordinator here at Spiritual Life Center. And joining me today is Tom Carr. He's one of our spiritual directors and has been generous enough to give us some of his time and have a conversation with us. How you doing, Tom?
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Great to be here, Courtney.
I'm really glad to have you.
Yeah.
Um, if you would be so kind, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. All right. I'm an ordained American Baptist pastor. Just retired, actually, a little less than a year ago from full-time pastoral ministry of almost 40 years. Married for over 40 years, a wife Peg. We have two grown children, Jeff and Sarah, and our daughter-in-law, Sarah. Um, Originally, I'm from Detroit, and my growing up, like everyone, really shaped my life and my vocation, my vocational calling. And really, the most profound part of that was when I was 16 years old. My mother died, and my father remarried shortly afterwards, and we became an interracial family. Um, with Katie, who is Black. Um, and among many things that really helped shape me is that Katie and I, from particularly my junior and senior year in high school, and then in college when I was home on break, and that we would have long conversations deep into the night about so many things that meaningful things. And one of those was that Katie would describe what it was like growing up Black in a, I don't even know how to put it, in a segregated place, which Detroit at that time really was, but just in America, what it was like, and to be a black woman, which made an enormous impact on my life. And so one of the things that is really significant to me is racial justice. Also, since the mid 1980s, I've been engaged with environmental justice, eco-justice, and just ecology and human justice, just for people that want to know, are really two sides of the same coin. You cannot have a healthy ecology with human injustice going on. You can't have uh, human injustice going on and or human justice going on with a creation that is being degraded. So I've worked with religious communities for, oh my gosh, almost 30 years, both ecumenically and on an interfaith basis. And then in the late 1990s, another profound shift for me was when I discovered, or maybe he discovered me, the work of Thomas Berry and Teilhard de Chardin and Mary Evelyn Tucker and others with what is known as the new cosmology, or the universe story, which a cosmology really is the way you see life and how you look at life, and also culturally as part of that. So that has been an enormous impactor on me. And then in 2006, I began meeting regularly with the spiritual director from the Spiritual Life Center. And then, let's see, 2014, I finished a 2-year training and an internship program at the Spiritual Life Center for spiritual direction. And so I've been a certified spiritual director for, what is that, 7 years. So that's probably more than you wanted to know, but that's just a little bit about my life.
That's I think that's really full, really full.
Thank you.
Um, I'm curious how did spiritual direction, like participating in as a directee, impact you when you first started?
Well, when I first started, I had a couple of very good friends that encouraged me to, start seeing a spiritual director. And I always thought I was too busy in that. But how it really impacted my life was a couple ways. One was that it was the discipline of monthly, around monthly conversations about what's happening to me in my spiritual life, whether I recognize them or not. And I have to say that there were times, and this and it remains a very significant thing, is when my spiritual director asks me a question or points to something that I've never seen about me and my relationships, or even considered, or reminds me of something. So, for instance, for about 10 years or so in my own personal prayer life, if you will, that every once in a while I call up what my spiritual director calls my counsel. And my counsel is a sister hawk, a red-tailed hawk, brother coyote with the foolish wisdom, mother bear with strength and the powers of the universe, and then brother buffalo, sacrifice and teaching reciprocity. And so every once in a while she says, have you sat with your counsel for a while? And it's like, oh yeah. So a lot of times it's the reminders or something that she will say and point out, and it's like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. It never occurred to me, but it was something that was deep inside. So that's how spiritual direction for me as a directee impacts me.
How did that impact what you were doing with your work for racial justice and ecological justice, if at all?
Oh, very, very, very much. It was a melding, merging. It really helped me see how significant it is that the most significant thing, and I believe in systemic change, that there must be institutional, cultural change to deal with eco-justice and racial justice. There must be. That said, on an even deeper level, we must deal with this from a deeply spiritual, if you will, level. This is about morals and ethics and values, definitely, and it is about the spirit. So for me, I believe I'm a Christian, and I'm an incarnationalist, which means that the divine dwells within all existence. I don't believe like a tree is God, but God's spirit dwells within. And so that perspective of the spirit being within all existence, all life, impacts and gives an urgency to this. And so one of the things that I have come to, and I have to credit Thomas Berry, for this, is that I believe in human rights, that every human being, certain rights. But you know what? So does a forest. So does a river. It has a right to be a forest. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying that humans can't go and cut down a tree to build, a home, or, whatever it might be. But it has a right, a forest has a right to be a forest. A species has a right to be a species. Air has a right to be air, not polluted. Anyway, so I guess that's part of it. And I guess with spiritual direction, it's that that the primary, for me, the primary experiential relationship with God or spirit is within life, all life. I'm a Baptist, so we believe in the Bible. I mean, goodness sake, Baptist. But God's primary book is what we call nature. It's all life. So in terms of spiritual direction, it's an experiential thing with other people, with ourselves, and with all the rest of life. Yeah.
I love that. I'm over here trying not to grin ear to ear, mostly because that was my experience after about 6 months of being a directee or whatever we're calling it now.
Mm-hmm.
I had this awakening to the fact that it was right around Christmas and everyone's opening their Christmas gifts, and I just saw all this paper on the floor, and instantly I just thought of all the trees that had been cut down just to get crumpled up and thrown away. And it broke something in me in a very good way. But I think it was through the process of starting to go through spiritual direction, that I was actually able to see the connection between that tree and the paper and myself. And it spoke to something that had always been whispering in the back of my head, but hadn't actually had voice yet. So to hear you talking about that, I'm like, oh, yeah, me too. It was some sort of awakening.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's powerful. So what was it that made you say, all right, so I've been a spiritual directee for a while, and I think maybe I need to be a director too?
Well, that also had to do with friends. I had a friend, and she had told me for about 3 years. She said, "You should go into the internship program." Oh, I'm too busy. I'm too busy. And she'd come up to me another 3 months later. When are you going to go into the internship program? Because she had done training, I think, in 2006 or something like that, or 2007 or 8 or something like that, and just really encouraged me to do that. So that I have to say really moved. And then I kind of said, you know what, that's right. Because we had conversations about what that might mean. And I think not only did she, really encourage me, but I began to think about my own experience as a directee and what that was like, and thought about my spiritual director or companion. And one of the things was about listening. It was about listening, that I noticed that my spiritual director listened in a different way than I usually did. In pastoral ministry, people come to you and they want you to listen, but they want advice. And that's okay. That really is okay. And so that's what I did. And so people would say something, and then I'd be listening, and then it would trigger something in me, like, oh, if she just did XYZ. And it was okay. But what changed when I went into the internship program was the way to listen. They call it empathetic listening. I'm really still not sure what that means, but it's I do know what they're talking about. It's really, it's a kind of a broadening. It's a listening. It's a listening not just to the words, but it's listening with everything. It's listening with your mind and your spirit and your body. But also, I learned the discipline of blocking out those things that come into your mind. You're listening to somebody and, oh man, I know how I'm going to respond to her or him. I'll wait till they're done, then I'll give them the answer. And one of the things the training did for me was to say, okay, that's coming up, that's fine, that's arising in my thoughts, that's all right, but you let it go for now. It's you follow what the person is saying, no matter what that is. Does that make sense?
Total sense. I'm actually, as you were saying this, I was just like picturing a river,
Mm,
and a river doesn't have a plan.
mm,
A river just flows. It goes, it follows its path, and
yeah,
it doesn't have a thought of, oh, I'm going to go over here and do this.
yeah, yeah,
Which,
yeah.
hey, I could be making a big leap here, but it's even more of a connection to our environment and nature to just be with a person
Yes,
and
yeah,
just be with them.
yeah,
Hang out
yeah.
with, hang out with a tree and let the tree
That's
hang
right.
out with you. And it doesn't
That's
have
right.
a plan for you.
No,
It's just going
no,
to be there.
it's going to be there. It's a tree is perfectly a tree. I think, I think we are the only species that can be not what we're created to be.
Mm,
We are created to be, at least in my estimation, in the image of God, child of God, light of the world, as Jesus says. We're to be fully human, and often we are not.
mm,
We have this delusion of separation and this, different, these different kinds of things. But a tree is a tree,
yeah.
no matter what stage or phase that he or she is in. They're perfectly who they are. And actually, so are we. That's why I think it's so important that we take time to be with ourselves and to listen to our souls, to listen to our hearts, to listen to who we are, and to recognize that stuff. Where probably the shadow side comes up. Yeah, it does. That side that the ego, runs amok. We need egos, but it runs amok, and that's not who we are.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that is what it's another thing that spiritual direction has done for me. And it really affected the way I, particularly the last, was it 10 years, almost 10 years in pastoral ministry. People would come to me that had grown up in a church and had good experience with pastors, and they thought they were going to come and get advice from me. I would hardly ever give them, except certain times. I mean, it's okay to do that. Yeah. And it's okay to do that in spiritual direction every once in a while also. It all depends. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So from everything you're saying, it really sounds to me like you participating in spiritual direction, whether as a directee or a director, which I believe we're starting to call companion now,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
has shifted how you engage with people.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Some would say, subtly, because I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I've always been a pretty good listener,
Mhm.
but I can tell the difference. It's a very different kind of thing. So it really has shifted me, and another thing about spiritual direction or companionship is that is two seemingly contrasting things that I was thinking about as thinking about this today, is that there are times in a direction sessions, companionship session, that I can feel the movement of the Spirit so powerfully, so profound. There's just awe. And there have been a couple times it's just like, oh my, all I see is light. I mean, that's only happened a few times, but it's just like, oh my gosh. But there are other times where the sessions when I thought, oh, what a dud, I just, what in the heck, nothing, nothing happened, and neither does the other person, and then quite often the next month, that we meet, kind of out of the blue, the person might say, and not all the time, but say, do you remember we talked about this, last time we got together, this, and this? And then they'll talk about how a week ago, so that's like 3 weeks after our session, something came to them that just was this profound thing about their inner life, their spirit, the spirit. And I'm going, well, oh my gosh. And what I've learned is that the spirit is at work even when we think the spirit is not at work. Even when it's just dry and dull and dead, and it's just like, okay, well, it was a nice conversation we had, and that kind of thing. But that oh, and I guess what that says is that the real spiritual director is God. I mean, I think Thomas Merton said that someplace. I read that somewhere in one of his books or something like that. But the real spiritual director, and that is so true, is God. Because when the one of the prayers I always pray before I meet with somebody is finally, and I'll say to myself, this is not about me. This is about Courtney. This is about Courtney, and this is about you, God. Let me remember that. And then sometimes it kicks in and says, well, no, you're in it too. So, but it's primarily about that other person or group of people and God. Because God's a spiritual director. We're just kind of companions on the journey. Yeah. So yeah.
Makes me think about a couple people that I sit with, and we've had many of those experiences where we'll be done with our session, and I'll just, I can't believe we didn't get into anything.
Yeah.
And it's a humbling experience when they'll shoot me a text like later on in the week, or maybe at our next session, they'll mention something and how impactful that was. And I find it incredibly humbling, because it is exactly what you said, that I'm reminded, oh, wait, the spirit is at work, whether you feel like you are or not.
Right.
My job is to be the conduit.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And to go back to previous metaphor, to let that river flow through me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's created. There's a theme that I keep hearing from a lot of people lately, that this is a common occurrence. And since I'm new to being a director or a companion, it's really interesting to hear all these different themes that are popping up for different people.
Yeah. 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 That's good. Yeah. Because it really is, spiritual direction of companionship is really one person walking alongside of another person or group of people in the process of paying attention, to the movement of God, the spirit, the divine in his or her or their life, and as they're growing in intimacy with God. It really is. Yeah. So, yeah. And I like that phrase, Anam Cara. I don't know if you've heard of that. the Celtic for soul friend.
Mhm.
I really like that. I like that. It's a soul friend walking with another on their journey. Yeah, yeah,
That's beautiful.
yeah.
I've thought of that term in terms of people that I'm actually friends with,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not in the sense of as a director that I am being a soul friend to a
Mm-hmm.
devotee or someone that I'm companioning. So that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's a really interesting perspective, and I might,
Yeah.
after we're done here, I might go sit with that for a little while.
Yeah.
Um, one thing that that I've been asking everybody that I'm talking to is what one thing, if you can pick one, do you enjoy the most about being a spiritual companion, spiritual director? If you can't pick one, you can pick two.
Um, surprise. This, yeah, the surprises that so often arise that I am not expecting that arise, whether or not it's during that session or at some point when people might get in contact with you later or the next time. It's the surprise at how the way in which the spirit is working in someone's life. And the I'll add delight that that person recognizes that.
Hmm.
And a lot of times I have no clue. It's like, I didn't really. Even during the session, during a session when somebody says, "Oh my goodness, when you said something, this happened," and then they start talking, it's like, whoa. It's just surprise and delight. That's what it is. Yeah, yeah. There's other things too, but that's enough.
Not that you need my validation, but I love that answer.
Okay.
That's incredible. Um, so before we go, anything that we may not have touched on that you would want to share, or any thoughts that come to mind that you think someone might need to hear?
I don't, you know, um, other than, and I think we have touched on it, but other than that, the divine, the sacred mystery, spirit, is alive everywhere, and that we are connected, deeply, intimately connected, even when we don't think we are. Einstein said that separation is the great optical delusion, and we are connected. We're connected, and we're connected to the divine always, 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 whether we recognize that or not. And of course, that connection is love, because, at least in my tradition, God is love. So, yeah, that's good.
Well, thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you taking a chunk out of your day to come and just talk.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks, Courtney.
Very welcome.